So, Greg, could you give us a very brief insight into the book?
Well, I think that probably the insight comes from the subtitle, which is A Search for Principles in an Unprincipled Age. It's not only a cataclysmic age that we're living in, or an age where there is the very serious possibility of a cataclysm occurring to us. And as you know, ones which are going to make the recession today just seem like a mild irritation, and this outbreak that we're going through at the moment of swine flu just is going to be a hiccup by comparison with what we could be facing. But we have nothing, no moral base on which informs us. Now, historically, the moral base has been provided by the church, and in my opinion, the church did a very bad job of supplying that moral base. It tended to supply a base which was very much do as I say, not as I do. And I think that politicians and other moralists inherited that. It's a particularly, I was going to say a Western trait, but I think it's a trait common to most human beings, that we have one set of principles by which we live, and another one that we think the world should live.
I agree with that.
When people started questioning the power of the church and their ability, and the church's ability to control their lives, I think that was an extremely healthy thing. But I also think that we maybe threw the baby out with the bathwater, and we didn't actually recognize that within some of the precepts that the church was talking about, there was a lot of quite good sense and a lot of very sound moral principles. You don't have to believe in God not to believe that murder is a bad idea. And now, those people who ascribe to still try to clutch on to the ethics of the church, they're not bad people by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, most of them are extremely good people. However, for a lot of people today, the ethics propounded by religion are outdated. They are seen as being belonging to an age 2,000 years ago, or in the case of Muslims, 1,500 years ago. But I mean, it's certainly not of our period. And I suppose that what I'm trying to do with Prophet of the New Millennium is to redefine ethics and principles which pertain to us today, which belong to the 21st century, and which we can use as guides to help us through life. And there's quite a famous adage now that manufacturers have when people phone up with complaints about various pieces of apparatus not working. And I can't remember what it is. There's an acronym for it, but it actually stands for, and finally, read the blank manual. And I guess that what I'm trying to help people to do is to define for themselves the manual of their own lives, to define for themselves a set of principles that's going to guide them through the rough times.
So people might look at the title of this and think that there's some sort of religious connotation to it. Are you actually saying then that it's more about the self?
Yes, it's certainly not religious in that it purports to abide by the tenets of any one religion. It's religious in that it examines certain of the ethics that are propagated by various religions. One of the things that I have against religion is that it defines things for each one of us, which it is our own responsibility to find, including our own concept of God. And I think that there are a lot of so-called atheists out there who are less atheist than they are agnostic. In other words, that they don't believe in the God as defined by religion, but nevertheless would be the first to admit that, you know, a bit like that line in Hamlet, there are more things in heaven and earth than I dreamed of in your philosophy, Horatio. There are, and it's interesting, I think, how many quantum scientists now are actually returning to the concept that there is some kind of force, an ununderstandable force, but some kind of force that maybe doesn't control the universe, but is certainly a huge force within it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that there is a very sharp distinction now being drawn, and an extremely healthy sharp distinction being drawn between people of religion and people of spirituality. Gandhi said of atheists that they were closer to God than the Pharisee. And I think that that's true too.
Yeah.
I don't think that of atheists as being unspiritual beings.
No,
For a large part of my life, I was an atheist. In fact, I described myself as an atheist fundamentalist. But that was also part of a quest to find the spiritual inside of me, and it was a rejection rather than of the spiritual of the cant of religion that I've been subjected to.
So, Greg, how long did it take you to develop the idea and then put your idea into words?
Yeah, a lot longer than I had imagined it would
Right.
be. It was one of those things. They say that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first footstep. Well, I mean, I set out on my journey thinking I may be travelling 50 miles, and it turned out to be a much bigger safari than I had ever imagined.
Right.
And yeah, it took me, I suppose, from start to finish, it took me probably 3 or 4 years.
Right.
The actual write, it was something that I wrote a bit and then went back and then rewrote it and then changed my mind about certain things. And,
Yeah, sure.
so it was not an easy birth.
So, Greg, if you could choose just one line from this book to show to the world, which would it be and why?
Yeah, it's one of those very good questions. I guess what I have to say is I would choose the subtitle. I think that it probably says it all. I think that what the book is a search. I'm not saying that I have got the answers. In fact, I would be suspicious of anybody who suggested that they did have answers.
Yeah.
I think too much of our problem today is people finding answers and not enough people looking for the right questions.
Yeah.
So it is a search, and it is a search for principles which I think are absolutely necessary as the foundation of life.
Absolutely.
And in an unprincipled age, well, I think there is absolutely no question that we have allowed our principles to be forfeit in favour of just quite extraordinary. I don't even think it's a materialism. I think it's just a lack of thought, a lack of consideration. We bought into this concept that greed is good, and when greed is hatred, and we need to re-examine all of that. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the person to re-examine it, but I think that I pose 1 or 2 questions that we all need to ask ourselves.
Greg, many people see books of this nature and think it's not for them. Not about or for the man on the street, as it were. What would you like to say to these people?
Well, it's a book about life and about the future and about not only our future, but our children's future and our grandchildren's future. And there are going to be people who intensely dislike the book. I've come across people already who intensely dislike the book. And that's fine. I have no problem with that at all. You certainly cannot write a book that is going to appeal to everybody.
No.
But I would say to those people, at least read it and by all means then have a violent objection to it. But ponder some of the questions that the book poses. It is your future we're talking about. It is your children's future and your grandchildren's future. These are questions that are talking about the wider picture, not the very parochial picture that that we are all being lulled into believing is actually the future, the future that the politicians present or that the economists present. I certainly believe that it is entirely understandable by everybody, and if it isn't, then I failed.